Healthcare workers, delivery drivers, cleaners, they're all doing their bit to ensure our survival. But they need a helping hand, and it looks like they're getting it from machines. Drones are disinfecting the streets, while robots are taking temperatures and measuring blood pressure in hospitals. Not to mention the computers crunching data to help scientists find a cure. And then there's artificial intelligence. Now, you've probably seen a movie or two where things have gone really bad and there's been a robotic revolution. But we're already using AI in our everyday lives, from Siri on our iPhones to the recommendations on Netflix. It's all a form of artificial intelligence. But can it help eradicate COVID-19 and better prepare us for a future pandemic? Natalie Perhonen reports.
In the race to combat coronavirus, there is an ally: technology. Every day, scientists and doctors are learning more about COVID-19. There is a lot of data, and it just keeps coming. That's where artificial intelligence comes into play. In some parts of the world, AI algorithms are used to detect and diagnose the spread of the virus. It's part of the toolkit of monitoring the population through surveillance and contact tracing. The machine learning power of AI means it's also able to trawl through medical literature and the data sets to fast-track research on vaccines and treatments. Here are some examples. In Panama, AI is being used to check CT scans of chests to speed up the diagnosis to just a few minutes. In the US, some hospitals are using AI as a predictive tool to determine which patients are more likely to need ventilators. It won't replace a doctor's judgment, but it does give them more information to make decisions. At this pharma tech lab in Oxford, AI is trying to find drugs that work against COVID-19. It's automating the process of screening about 15,000 existing drugs to see if any can be repurposed.
Our artificial intelligence platform is able, and primary goal is to gain productivity in drug discovery. So a process that would take, in traditional context of drug discovery, around 4.5 years, we have shown to be able to deliver in 12 months.
Robots are also being deployed on the front lines. One of their biggest assets is that they can't get infected. So they can help reduce the risk of contamination by carrying out tasks that medical workers would normally do in person. This kind of tech has been available before, but it's being repurposed in real time during this crisis. Evaluating just how well it's performed will only happen once we're through this pandemic. But what already seems apparent is that technology has never been more important for our survival. Natalie Perhonen, The Newsmakers.
Looking forward to this discussion. Joining me now from Zurich is Gerd Leonhard. He is the author of Technology versus Humanity: The Coming Clash Between Man and Machine. And from Ostend, Belgium, we have Fabrice Goffin, the co-CEO of ZORABOTS, which is deploying robots to fight COVID-19. Good to have you both on the program. Conversation will sort of flow between robots and AI and sometimes mix the two together. So correct me sometimes if I do that in an improper way. Fabrice, let me start with you. Are you excited about the potential solutions that we're coming up with in the face of crisis and in the face of a pandemic?
Well, I was honestly always excited by the solutions that we could bring to the novelties today in the world, but I cannot be excited that it has to be coming with COVID-19. This is a terrible time where almost 95% of all businesses are going to be affected on this. But it is the time where indeed robotics and new technologies can prove that they are at service of humans and they can do something.
Right. Gerd Leonhard, when we look at, say, the history of the 20th century, a lot of the major technological advancements came via the push of some terrible crisis, some war, something that forced us to think out of the box. Are we living through one of those eras right now?
Well, clearly, Milton Friedman, the economist, said, only a crisis, whether real or perceived, causes real change. And I think that's definitely true. I mean, we're moving into a time now of big tech, big healthcare, and big state. And all that together is a giant kick in the arm, for anything having to do with technology, which includes healthcare and, of course, intelligence, so-called intelligent machines. I call this time the Great Transformation. I think that's probably more optimistic than the Great Recession.
Right. But Gerd, as you say the Great Transformation, allow me to be a bit skeptical here, right? Okay. Right now, sure, robots are doing one or two interesting things in order to protect us from catching the virus, spreading the virus. People are having their meetings on Zoom. Okay, but has there been anything outrageously different over the past 3 months or so?
Well, I think it's quite clear that technology will not solve, social, cultural, political issues when it's about fighting the virus and taking the right policy measures. Technology doesn't do that, right? Technology is a tool. And if we use science and technology in the right way, we can solve major problems with this, but we do have to be willing to apply the rules that it takes for it to actually work, right? So I think if you believe in science, you believe in technology, you have the tools, and then you have to translate that into action in each economic system.
Fabrice, are we in danger of getting attached to some sort of hype bubble when it comes to technology because it's giving us some momentary solutions right now?
Well, not at all. And to be fairly honest, what I think it's not a moment situation. Of course, you have some robots now that are getting to be used in hospitals, but the most important part is the after COVID. And we are not done with that thing. There is a current COVID, there will be an after COVID, and maybe another thing coming up. So the robots will be there. And if it's to take, let's say, measurements of fever or to reassure people in other ways, the reassurement will be the key to open many other businesses. I will be reassured if I know I can go to a restaurant and there is nobody in that restaurant that has fever whatsoever. If somebody is positive or not, this is another question. It's all about assurance.
Right. Gerd Leonhard, tell our viewers why they shouldn't be terrified by the prospect of AI becoming more ubiquitous in our society.
Well, I always say it could be heaven or it could be hell, right? It could be heaven if we can use all the data and the intelligence together, and we can
But we
really
want to know. We want to know if it's heaven or hell. That's the difference, right?
Well, I think the heavenly part is what technology can do, big data, artificial intelligence, and the bad part is what it can be abused to do, for example, which is to track everybody for any reason, right? So this is a question of policy and public agreement and social contracts and, of course, regulation. So technology by itself, I think a famous science fiction author once said, it's morally neutral until we use it.
Right.
And that is the key point.
Right. And to build on that, let me pose this to Fabrice then. We've seen, unfortunately, a lot of the poorest people without access to wealth, to technology, people without access to proper healthcare, living in healthy environments, suffering really badly when it comes to COVID-19. Do you have this fear that you might develop the most tremendous technology here and we might have great technological breakthroughs, but they'll only be for the few in the coming future?
Well, again, I would say not, because the first robots that we are currently deploying as ZORABOTS, it is in ZORABOTS Africa, meaning the first robots that we have been introducing that are helping in order to catch if people have fever or if they're wearing the mask is actually in Rwanda. So I would say that it's not the best, let's say the most economical part of the world when you think about Africa, but I honestly think it's one of the most booming, and it's one of the premier in this technology. This is very interesting to see.
Okay, so Gerd, we've seen, I guess, with mobile phone technologies, with solar panels, sometimes they're easier to implement in places that don't have a pre-existing archaic grid of phone lines or other electrical grids. So with that in mind, is there an opportunity for a lot of the new technology to really take off in places that were far behind other, Western industrialized democracies?
Well, clearly is, of course, the biggest thing about intelligent machines is data, right? If you have lots of data, then you could deploy it. If you have little data, you can't deploy it. And that could be an issue in developing countries, right? And the other issue is the too much of a good thing issue, right? When you have too much technology, it can be oppressive. It can be putting people into the wrong places and into the wrong pile of statistics and so on and so on. But overall, clearly, this is going to be a global thing. 9 billion people on the internet by 2030, we're clearly going to a world where technology is everywhere.
Gerd, give me some insight into the type of thing or the type of prevention we might see for future pandemics, right? So in January or so, we all got news that something was happening in Wuhan. With the development of AI, what would happen then? Would we be given a bit more of a heads up by the AI? Would it be able to recognize symptoms ahead of time? Tell us what would happen there.
Well, I think in the ideal world, all of our healthcare data can go into a secure cloud, which is secured, administered for each person in a really objectively secure way, right? And then you can compare the data using artificial intelligence, and you could say, it's very likely that because you were there, you may have this issue, and then we can have this huge amount of intelligence which humans can't actually fathom. We're talking about hundreds of trillions of data feeds, and that could lead to precluded action, right? And to take anticipatory action without being surveillance, right? This is the key point here, of course. We don't want to have 100% security and 0% freedom. So that has to be balanced. But clearly, diagnostics, warnings, precaution, we already got a lot better in this crisis than any other crisis before. That's also something to be said. But if the data isn't available, like Chinese data wasn't available until later, then we still wouldn't have any AI to work on it.
But Gerd, do you honestly trust governments as they are right now to have all of our private personal health data in one cloud system?
Well, clearly, this is the question of whether you trust the government, period, or not, right? But I think the answer to that is when we have the data available and we have intelligence, we can beat a lot of things that otherwise are impossible. So what we have to find out is how can we securely do this? Maybe there's a global digital identity entity, a combined entity, a UN-type entity, which we'll need sooner or later, global government, if you can even say that, right? We need to have something that does it for everyone, and it cannot just be one company or one government. We're talking about a global standard for digital healthcare issues, right? And this is clearly something that would be extremely helpful, but could also be extremely badly abused. So this is a problem that we have to solve on the policy level.
Fabrice Goffin, is there any way that you can look at where you feel that they are doing things right, where things are moving in the right direction when it comes to robotics, to AI, and the general embracing of technology to use it for good?
Well, we have to remember putting the robots into the field today, it will be always under control of humans. We have, for instance, we have a code of conduct at our company that we are not taking the data at this point. We have to see also for the rules of the GDPR, the European rules. And even when we operate in Africa, or when, just as we get today, we get a lot of demands from the United States, we have that code of conduct that we want to keep on as a company and as a human being, because personally, I don't feel very well by giving all the data about my personal life and about my personal health and about everything about myself, my family, my kids, and so on, to spread it to, indeed, as my colleague is saying here online, to any government. So there must be a clear code of conduct, and it's only from that moment that we will be able to solve some things if somebody is looking the same way.
Right. Gerd, we've seen contact tracing right now, right? I mean, but in a way, it's almost very manually done. Is what you're envisioning something that is ultimately contact tracing writ large, times a million?
I think that contact tracing and other measures like this are emergency measures that we apply in emergencies. And when the emergency is finished, we take it out again. And this is something we have to make sure. So in an emergency situation, I'm told to stay at home, so I stay at home. But emergency doesn't mean the next 20 years. So this is something that we have to also be able to go back on. And for that, we need to have bodies that supervise this. And let's be clear about one thing. When we talk about artificial intelligence, these machines are not intelligent like a human, right? They are working on numbers, binary numbers. Humans don't work on numbers. Humans work like this. They can work on thousands of different subsets of things. Very important to remember, technology is not intelligent like a human. It just does numbers. It does logic. We need more than logic to live.
Fabrice, for those who fear a Terminator-type moment, a singularity, where the machines move beyond the binary and they become more intelligent, perhaps, than the humans, is that a realistic possibility, in your opinion?
Not today, and we are far, far, far away from any scenario like this one. I think we are closer to a virus that would destroy the whole world if we are not acting today by making sure that this virus is not deploying more. So we have to have a little bit of faith instead of fear into technology, and the right moment is now ready for robots and for AI, for instance, also to prove that it's a service to humans. In daily life, absolutely.
Gerd, do you agree with that? The moment is now for robots?
Absolutely. I think we should go into the future not with fear, but with optimism. But we should also not be stupid because we're excited about things, right? It takes a balance of those two things.
Okay, Gerd Leonhard and Fabrice Goffin, really good to talk to both of you. I thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.